Lucille Ball said the name, Desi Arnaz, and Johnny Carson's face collapsed. His eyes filled with tears. And the professional mask he'd maintained for 30 years shattered in seconds. It was May 1986. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Studio 6B in Burbank. A Tuesday night that seemed like any other. Johnny was in the middle of his opening monologue, delivering jokes about politicians and movie stars with his trademark timing. The audience laughed on cue. Ed McMahon chuckled from his desk. Doc Severinsen's band waited for their musical cues. Everything was running like the well-oiled machine it had been for 24 years. Then Johnny introduced his guest for the evening. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Lucille Ball." The audience erupted. Lucy walked onto the stage in an elegant blue dress, waving to the crowd with that famous smile. She was 74 years old, still vibrant, still commanding every room she entered. Johnny stood to greet her, kissing her cheek, holding her hand as she settled into the guest chair. They started with the usual banter. Memories of old Hollywood. Funny stories from the I Love Lucy days. The audience ate it up. Lucy was a pro. She knew exactly how to play to the cameras, how to time a punchline, how to keep America entertained. But then, 8 minutes into the interview, Johnny asked a question he'd asked 100 guests before. "Lucy, what are you most proud of in your career?" Lucy's smile softened. She looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at Johnny. "You know what I'm most proud of, Johnny? That Desi and I created something together that outlived our marriage. That even after everything fell apart between us, we made something beautiful that people still love." The moment she said, "Desi," Johnny's entire body changed. His smile froze. His hand, which had been holding a blue cue card, slowly lowered to the desk. His eyes, those sharp, observant eyes that had interviewed presidents and movie stars and comedians for 3 decades, suddenly glistened with tears. Carson stopped mid-interview. The entire studio froze. The control room noticed immediately. Director Bobby Quinn leaned toward his monitors. "What's happening? Is Johnny okay?" Producer Fred DeCordova stood behind him, watching Johnny's face on the screen. "Keep rolling," Fred said quietly. "Don't cut. Something's happening." Ed McMahon had noticed too. He leaned forward slightly at his desk, his jovial expression replaced by concern. In 24 years of sitting beside Johnny Carson, Ed had seen him handle everything with perfect composure. But this was different. Lucy saw it too. She reached across the space between them, her hand hovering near Johnny's. "Johnny? Are you all right?" Johnny blinked. A single tear escaped and ran down his cheek. He made no move to wipe it away. When he spoke, his voice was rough, barely controlled. "I'm sorry, Lucy. It's just, hearing you say his name. Desi. I haven't been able to say his name out loud in 4 years." The audience was completely silent. 300 people who had been laughing moments ago now sat frozen, sensing they were witnessing something profound. Lucy's face softened with understanding. "Oh, Johnny. I know. No," Johnny said, shaking his head, that single tear now joined by others. "You don't. Nobody knows. I've never told anyone. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1982. Johnny Carson wasn't just the king of late-night television. By 1982, he was an American institution, beloved, trusted, the man who tucked America into bed every night with laughs and celebrity interviews. His personal life was complicated, multiple divorces, struggles with alcohol he never discussed publicly, but his professional life was untouchable. He was also intensely private. He never discussed his pain, never showed vulnerability, never let the mask slip. It was part of what made him great, that perfect control, that ability to be funny and charming no matter what was happening in his personal life. In December 1982, Desi Arnaz died. Lung cancer. He was 69 years old. Desi had been Johnny's mentor. Not publicly. Not in any way that made headlines or got written into television history books. But privately, during Johnny's early struggling years in the 1950s, Desi Arnaz had seen something in the young comedian that others had missed. It was 1955. Johnny was performing at a small club in Los Angeles, doing stand-up between commercial voiceover jobs, barely making rent, wondering if he'd ever break through. Desi and Lucy came to the club one night. Not for any particular reason, just to see new talent, to remember what it was like to be hungry and young and desperate to make it. Johnny's set that night was rough. Half the jokes landed, half didn't. He was nervous, sweating through his cheap suit, struggling to connect with the sparse crowd. But Desi saw something. After the show, he found Johnny at the bar. "You've got timing, kid," Desi said, his Cuban accent thick, his eyes sharp with recognition. "Timing is everything in this business. You can learn jokes. You can't learn timing. You've got it." Johnny, 29 years old and exhausted, looked at this man who had created the most successful show on television and didn't know what to say. "Come have lunch with me tomorrow," Desi said. "I want to talk to you about something." That lunch turned into a mentorship that lasted 7 years. Desi taught Johnny everything. Not just about comedy timing, but about surviving television, about dealing with network executives, about maintaining dignity when you were being jerked around by sponsors and producers who saw you as a commodity. "Never let them see you rattled," Desi would say, usually over drinks at Musso and Frank Grill, where they'd meet whenever Johnny needed advice. "The camera sees everything. If you're in control, America trusts you. If you lose control, they turn the channel." Johnny listened. He absorbed. He learned. When Johnny got The Tonight Show in 1962, Desi was the first person he called. "I got it. I got the show." "I know you did, kid," Desi said. "I always knew you would. Now remember, control. Always control. Never let them see you break." They stayed in touch over the years. Not constantly. Both men were busy building empires, navigating divorces, dealing with the chaos of fame. But when Johnny needed advice, when he was struggling with NBC executives or personal demons, Desi was there. The last time they spoke was November 1982. A phone call. Desi's voice weak, the cancer already stealing his strength. "Johnny, I need you to promise me something." "Anything, Desi. Don't let this business make you cruel. You're getting bitter. I can hear it. The divorces, the fights with the network, all of it, it's making you hard. Don't let it. Stay human. Stay vulnerable. That's the secret they don't tell you. Vulnerability is strength, not weakness." Johnny had made a joke. Deflected. "I'll try, Desi. But it's easier said than done. Promise me, Johnny. Promise me you won't become one of those hollow men who wins everything and loses himself." Johnny had promised. They'd said goodbye. Desi died 3 weeks later. Johnny didn't go to the funeral. He told people he was sick, that he couldn't make it, that he'd pay his respects privately. The truth was simpler and more devastating. He couldn't face it. Couldn't face Lucy's grief, couldn't face the casket, couldn't face the reality that his mentor was gone. He threw himself into work. More shows. More interviews. More control. He became harder, sharper, less forgiving. The bitterness Desi had warned about settled deeper into his bones. For 4 years, Johnny never spoke Desi's name out loud. Not once. He couldn't. Every time he tried, something in his throat closed up. So he just didn't. Until tonight. May 1986. When Lucille Ball sat in his guest chair and said "Desi," with such casual love that Johnny's carefully constructed walls finally crumbled. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The studio was still silent. Lucy's hand was still extended toward Johnny. Ed McMahon had tears on his cheeks. The audience sat frozen, barely breathing. Johnny wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, took a shaky breath, and did something he'd never done in 24 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He told the truth. Desi was my mentor, Johnny said, his voice raw. Nobody knew. We kept it private. But he taught me everything. How to survive this business. How to be professional. How to... He paused, struggling. How to control myself. Lucy nodded, tears streaming down her own face now. He loved you, Johnny. He used to tell me about you. About how proud he was of what you'd become. I didn't go to his funeral, Johnny said, the words tumbling out now, for years of guilt spilling onto live television. I couldn't face it. I told everyone I was sick, but I couldn't. And I've hated myself for it every single day since. The camera pushed in slowly. The control room was silent. No one was directing anymore. They were just witnesses. The last thing he said to me, Johnny continued, was to stay human. To stay vulnerable. To not let this business make me cruel and hollow. And I broke that promise, Lucy. I became exactly what he warned me not to become. Lucy stood up. She didn't ask permission. She just stood and walked the 3 steps to Johnny's desk. She reached across and took both of his hands in hers. You didn't break the promise, Johnny, she said firmly. You're breaking right now. In front of millions of people. That's vulnerability. That's exactly what Desi meant. Backstage, he made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. Johnny looked at Lucy's hands holding his. Then he looked at the camera. Camera 1, the main camera, the one that broadcast his face to millions of American homes every night. I need to do something, he said. And I need you all to understand why. He stood up. Reached into his jacket pocket. Pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. Folded and creased from years of being carried around. Desi wrote me a letter, Johnny said, holding it up. 3 days before he died. It came in the mail. I read it once, the day I got it, and I've carried it with me every single day since. In my pocket. During every show. Every interview. Every monologue. It's been with me. But I've never read it out loud. Lucy's eyes widened. Johnny, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. I should have read it at his funeral. But I couldn't. So I'm going to read it now. If that's okay. He looked at the audience. At Ed. At Doc and the band. At the cameras. Is that okay? Can I take a minute of your time to read something from a man who changed my life? The audience responded with applause. Not performative applause, but the kind that carries permission and support. Johnny unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The paper was yellow with age, the handwriting shaky. Desi had been very sick when he wrote it. But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. Johnny began to read. Dear Johnny, I'm writing this because I won't be around much longer, and there are things I need you to know. You probably think I helped you when you were starting out because I saw talent. That's partly true. But the real reason is because I saw myself, the scared kid from Cuba who didn't think he belonged, who was sure someone would figure out he was faking it. You never faked anything, Johnny. That's your gift. Even when you're telling jokes, you're telling the truth. Don't lose that. I know you're angry right now. Angry at your ex-wives. Angry at NBC. Angry at yourself. I've been there. Lucy and I destroyed each other before we figured out how to love each other again. Anger is easy. Forgiveness is hard. But here's what I learned. The only thing that matters in the end is the people you loved and the people who loved you. Not the shows. Not the awards. Not the ratings. Just love. So stay soft, Johnny. I know they tell you to be tough. To never let them see you break. But breaking is how the light gets in. I'm proud of you. I'll always be proud of you. Stay human. Love. Desi. Johnny's hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the letter. He folded it carefully, placed it on his desk, and looked at Lucy. I'm so sorry I didn't say goodbye, he whispered. Lucy pulled him into an embrace. Right there, on camera, in front of millions. Johnny Carson, the man who never lost control, sobbed into Lucille Ball's shoulder while America watched. The audience rose as one. Standing ovation. Not for entertainment. For courage. Ed McMahon walked over and placed his hand on Johnny's shoulder. Doc Severinsen raised his trumpet and played a single, gentle note. The studio lights seemed softer somehow. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the show, Johnny had the letter framed. It hung in his dressing room until his final Tonight Show broadcast in 1992. In his last monologue, he referenced it. A wise man once told me to stay human. I've tried. I hope I succeeded. The letter now sits in the Smithsonian, next to Johnny's desk nameplate and one of Lucy's I Love Lucy scripts. That night changed everything. Johnny Carson became gentler. More open. He started going to therapy. He reconciled with people he'd hurt. And he never carried guilt about Desi again. Because he'd finally said goodbye.